Amazing talks, and actually you helped me with the background. And I'll just start with answering the question that I agree with Rick that sports activity are very important, but it's better to do it with friends. Let me explain why. So we are going to explore about the neuroscience of loneliness and health. So when I'm saying the word loneliness, you're probably imagining an individual all alone in his room, not very happy about being alone, and maybe even an alcoholic. We need to cope with loneliness somehow. But it's very important to distinguish that you can be alone, but you can be very happy and fulfilled about it, like in solitude, when an individual chooses to be alone, like the monk here in the beautiful mountain, or writing retreat and choosing to be alone and very content about it. But also, you can be with a lot of people and still you can feel alone. You can have a lot of people around you, maybe they even called friends, but you still feel alone and you feel lack of belongingness. So loneliness can be defined in a different way, but it's important to distinguish that it's a subjective negative experience, and also lack of meaningful relationship. Some people can define it as feeling rejected, lack of belongingness, and craving for social contact. This needs, this want for social, mental, physical contact. And also, loneliness can cause pain. There are some studies that show that loneliness activate in the brain the same areas as physical pain. And we will talk more about the brain later. So loneliness is something that's been discussed and argued from the dawn of time. Even in the Bible, at the beginning of the Bible, there is a saying, it is not good that man should be alone. And there has been done many, many research from the philosophical aspects and from the mental health, looking at how loneliness affects, and psychological, and also understanding why do we even get into this position. But in the last few years, thanks to COVID, when billions of people were isolated in their home and felt loneliness, the awareness of the importance of loneliness and how it can harm our health rise, and also research. So I think that in the term of why COVID kind of helped us to study and to raise the awareness of why it's so important. So as Georgia said already, social needs are basic human needs like food. I want to tell you about one of my favorite studies that conducted by Dr. Olivia Tomova. She was here at Cambridge. Now she opened her own lab, and where she did a very interesting experiment. She took participants either in isolation for 10 hours in a room without any social media, any social cues, just let's call it boring books and some pen and paper, complete isolation for 10 hours, and compare it to 10 hours of fasting with no food. Then she scanned the participant brain and looked what the brain region that activated if you show social cues versus food cues. So she found out that both food cues and social cues activated the same brain region in the midbrain. Here you can see in the photo that are involved with the craving, the hunger, when we starve, when we are craving for food, which shows us that activation when we are craving for social contact, it's the same processes that happening like food. Hence, one of the things that I think that the Maslow hierarchy of needs is a bit out of date. So here we see a pyramid that it's a well-established model that shows that which are the needs that are crucial for survival, like food and water. Unlike prestige, which is nice things to have, it's kind of up in the ladder. And then we see that safety and security and belongingness and love on the third place. So not only me, but other researchers argued that social needs need to be in the first step with the physical needs, and we have more evidence these days. So let's move on and see how loneliness affects the brain. So, and I want to emphasize on the word chronic loneliness, because it's very normal and very healthy to feel lonely. It actually can bring a lot of curiosity and interest. If you read about the philosophy around loneliness, like other negative emotion, sadness, which is good sometimes, also loneliness from now and then, it's okay and very normal. But the problem is when we have a long period of chronic loneliness, when an individual suffers from loneliness for years, and it's a serious burden. So this is where it's affecting negatively in the brain. And there are many, many studies that used neuroimaging study, like the scans here at the CBU. They looked at different techniques that people with that consider themselves lonely and how it changes the brain. So as Rick showed very nicely, there are two main ways of looking at the structural, the brain side, the tissue, and the functional, the activity. So studies show that both the activity of the brain changes within lonely individuals, and the actual sizes, for example, reduce of the gray matter, similar to what we see in older adults as a normal, healthy deterioration, we see in lonely individuals even when they're young. And here I brought you a summary of the brain regions that been reported in a study that took thousands of scans and summarized the main brain region that are changes both structurally and functionally within lonely individuals. And the systems that involved are like stress, social perception, emotional regulation, and motivation. So chronic loneliness changes many systems and many aspects of the brain. So now we understand that it's really harmful on the brain, but how the chronic loneliness have impact on health. So studies show that chronic loneliness significant health risk factor linked to increase of morbidity and mortality, and compare them to like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Sounds really scary, especially that if we see a pack of cigarettes, we see a warning, it's not healthy for you, but I don't see any warning against loneliness, right? So maybe there is some more changes that need to be done. And how did scientists decided that it's compared to 15 cigarettes a day? So I am bringing you one of the meta-analysis review. What is a meta-analysis? It's a paper that takes many, many other studies and calculating all of the other data from the many studies and put them as one big study. And here we see that the meta-analysis here look at which factors in life affecting morbidity and mortality. Morbidity, it's increase of diseases, mortality, death, okay? So which of the factors affecting our health? So the three main factors on top, you see the bars, are the social factors. So if you can look under that, we see the alcohol and smoking, so these two bars are smoking, are similar in length to the social factors, which is quite serious if you think of that. And there are many, many other studies that compare between these factors, and this replicate that loneliness, social isolation, lack of social support can harm and increase morbidity like smoking cigarettes. So we see also the awareness raises also the WHO consider loneliness a global pandemic. They decided to take action. Here we see a leaflet that they show. But I want also us to think of how the mechanism, the biological mechanism of how, okay, we understand that it affects the brain, we understand that it affects health, but how? How does it happen? So I will try to, in very brief 2 seconds, explain a complex theory. Let's hope for the best. So let's imagine we are in the lonely island, okay? There is no one around us. It's only us. So our brain, the main job is to keep us from threats, keep healthy, and our brain tells the immune system what to do. I don't know if you knew that, but everything happens in your body. The brain is the big boss. And with the immune system too, we have different hormones that come out from the brain and tell the immune system how to act. So when we don't have people around us, we have one big threat that's avoided, and it's viruses, okay? So our brain says, okay, there is no people, I can take down the antiviral immunity system, but there is no other people that can help me in case if I'm injured, and maybe I will be attacked by some scary animals on this island, and the brain increases the stress arousal. So this is also corroborate with research that show that in lonely individuals, the stress responses are increased. And by a cascade of events of different hormones in the body, the immune response is by increasing inflammation and decreasing antiviral. But you can ask me why it's bad to increase inflammation. So chronic increased inflammation can lead to a lot of different diseases like cardiovascular, diabetes, cancer, and more. Moreover, we have evidence from genetic studies. So when looking at the gene expression within the immune system of lonely individual, we see here at the graph here, isolated versus integrated people. Integrated, we see increase of inflammation genes versus decrease of antiviral. So it's kind of complex figure here, but what they found, and it replicated in many studies, that people with higher loneliness, their gene are changes. But before I'm running out of time, I want to also show you positive stuff. So supportive social relationship can also improve our health. And we have two main systems that can improve. It's a vagus nerve, which is a nerve that in charge of relaxing, reducing the stress in our body, and oxytocin, which is the love hormone, which is also reducing the stress. So here we have a nice diagram that show how from reducing our stress we can improve our health, but we don't have enough time, so I will have to skip it. I'll just mention two important studies that show one of them across 85 years. They look at what the main factors that keep people live longer and happier, which was the quality of social relationship, specifically not physical activity, which was helpful, but and education or being rich, having supportive friend around you was the number one factor. Yes, so volunteering and helping others also can improve your health. And many psychological and sociological studies show that being active and socially engaged can decrease your depression and anxiety, increase your well-being, and improve cognitive function, corroborate with the cognitive reserve. And lastly, but most importantly, not everyone can just stand today and, okay, I'm not lonely anymore, I'm going to volunteer. Some need more help, like treatment, like therapy, which helps them to change the perceivedness, to change the way they think about themselves and the world. So, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy found to be very effective to treat loneliness. So it's also important to seek help and therapy when you're feeling lonely. And our duty as a community also to support vulnerable individuals. So we also need to look for the people who might be lonely and help them. Thank you very much.